My mom introduced my sister as the only child worth mentioning during her retirement speech. "She's the one who made me proud," she said, glancing at me with disgust. "Then you'll love what's coming next," I said into the microphone. Minutes passed, and the screen behind her lit up with photos she thought were destroyed. Gasps echoed. My mom couldn't even stand up. I didn't go to my mom's retirement party expecting to cause a scene. Honestly, I didn't even want to go. I sat in my car outside the banquet hall for a good 10 minutes just staring at the steering wheel, debating if I should turn around and pretend I had food poisoning. But I knew Kendra would be there, and if I didn't show up, I'd never hear the end of it. She'd spin it into some petty narrative about me being bitter or jealous or immature. Same old song. So I got out, straightened my wrinkled shirt, and walked in with a gift bag that still had the damn Walgreens tag on it. The hall was decked out like a wedding. White linens, candles, a big SS projection screen set up behind the podium. One of those PowerPoint slideshows was playing with music that sounded like it belonged in a baby shampoo commercial. Photos of mom through the years. Janice Hardwell, Educator of the Year. Janice Hardwell, cutting the ribbon at Jefferson Middle. Janice Hardwell with her beloved daughter Kendra at some school fundraiser. Not a single photo of me. I wasn't surprised. Just mildly irritated, like when you step in something wet with socks on. I found an empty seat near the back, close to the door in case I needed a fast escape. Clint, is that you?" A woman in a sequin jacket grinned down at me. "Oh my goodness, it's been years. You probably don't remember me. I was your mom's assistant in '98. Marla Banks." "Oh yeah. Sure," I said, smiling like I did remember. "I didn't. You look just like your father," she added. That made my stomach tighten a bit. I never liked when people said that. I nodded and she moved on thankfully. Kendra arrived fashionably late in a red dress that would have paid off half my car. She made a scene of hugging mom at the front of the room, the two of them soaking in the applause. I could hear people whispering things like "spitting image," always so poised, and my favorite, "the daughter who really made Janice proud." I pulled out my phone and scrolled mindlessly just to avoid punching something. Eventually, the speeches started. A string of people got up and talked about how strong, disciplined, and dedicated my mother was. And yeah, sure, she was all those things. She was also cold as ice. My childhood wasn't the kind where you ran into your mom's arms after scraping your knee. It was the kind where you were told to get a Band-Aid and not bleed on the carpet. But then she stood up. She was wearing this pale blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her hair was done in that tied updo she always favored for important events. She stepped up to the microphone, tapped it twice, and gave that calculated smile she used for photo ops and church fundraisers. "Thank you all so much for coming," she began. "Seeing all these faces, students, colleagues, friends, it really brings home what a journey this has been." Polite applause. She went on to thank the superintendent, the school board, even the janitorial staff. And then she said it. But, of course, none of this would have meant quite as much without my family. And I want to especially acknowledge my daughter, Kendra. Kendra did that fake surprised gasp and put a hand on her chest. "She's the one who made me proud," Mom continued, looking directly at her. "She's the one who followed the path I hoped she would. A leader. A giver. A woman of grace." And then she turned her eyes to me. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see it. That look. That thin-lipped, disappointed glare she always reserved for me. The one that said you never turned out the way I wanted. I sat frozen in my seat, the cheap plastic fork in my hand bending under my grip. People clapped. Kendra teared up. Someone whistled. My ears rang. I stood up. I didn't even realize I was doing it until my legs carried me halfway to the podium. My mom's smile twitched. Kendra looked like she just swallowed a bee. I reached for the mic. "Mind if I say a few words?" I asked, looking straight at my mother. She blinked, then gave the smallest, most reluctant nod I've ever seen. "Sure," she said, voice tight. "Of course." I turned to the crowd. "I'm Clint," I said. "Some of you probably know me as Janice's son. Or, judging by that speech, her less impressive offspring." A few people chuckled nervously. Now, Mom just said that Kendra is the one who made her proud. That she followed the path she wanted. That she's the child worth celebrating. I looked down for a second. Took a breath. "Well, Mom," I said, "if that's how you feel, then I think you're really gonna love what's coming next." I pulled the remote from my pocket. There was a beat of silence. People looked confused. My mother tilted her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. And then I clicked. The slideshow on the screen behind her, meant to show more pictures of her career highlights, flickered and changed. The first photo was of her and a man no one in that room recognized. They were holding hands on a beach. Janice was younger, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Then another photo. This man again, holding a newborn baby. The next photo, The same man in a hospital room, standing over Janice, who was cradling the baby in her arms. That baby was me. Gasps echoed through the room. Someone dropped their glass. You could have heard a pin drop. I turned to face the crowd again. I found these in her basement a few months ago. In a box labeled, "Do not open." My mom was frozen. Pale. Kendra's mouth hung open. That man, I said, pointing at the screen, is Rick Alston. He was in love with my mother. She was in love with him. And she never told me about him. Never told anyone. I swallowed the lump in my throat. She married my supposed father, Marlon, a few months after I was born. But Rick, he wrote her letters. Letters saying he wanted to raise me. To be in my life. The screen kept flipping through photos. Her and Rick are laughing at a picnic. Posing in front of some motel sign. Him kissing her pregnant belly. She buried all of it. Hide it. Pretended it didn't exist. My mom was still sitting. Still staring. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table like she was trying not to slide under it. Now, I'm not saying this to embarrass her, I lied. I'm saying it because she said tonight that only one of her kids was worth being proud of. But pride doesn't come from perfection. It comes from the truth. And I think the truth deserves a little light. The last photo came up, a grainy shot of Rick, arms around a toddler version of me, both of us laughing. I handed the mic back to the stunned MC and walked off the stage. I walked straight out of the banquet hall. Didn't stop to see if anyone followed me. Didn't look at my mom's face one more time. I didn't want to. I already knew what I'd see there. Disbelief. Shame. Fury. Maybe even a flicker of guilt, though that seemed unlikely. I got into my car, slammed the doors shut, and just sat there. My hands were shaking. Not with regret, surprisingly. I wasn't even sure it was anger anymore. It felt more like relief. The kind that hits you after you finally rip off a bandage that's been on way too long. You know it's going to sting, but God, does it feel better when it's gone? My phone started buzzing in my pocket. I let it go. Keep buzzing. I finally looked at the screen. Kendra, 2 missed calls. Kendra, what the hell did you do? Another text came in. Kendra, you ruined everything. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and stared out at the parking lot. A few people had stepped outside, probably trying to make sense of what just happened inside. I didn't wait to see who was watching. I drove home. Silence. Just me, the road, and the weight of everything I'd just unleashed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Junebug sat on my chest like a furry little paperweight, purring and biting my shirt sleeve. I stared at the ceiling, replaying it all in my head. The photos. Her face. The way people gasped. And that man Rick. The name still didn't feel real in my mouth. I pulled the old letters out of the drawer in my desk. The same ones I'd found months ago, in that dusty box in the basement. They still smelled like old paper and something vaguely floral. One of them had a smudge across the bottom, like it had been read so many times the ink started to run. He'll have your eyes, I bet. I hope he has your fire, too. I'd read that line a dozen times before. But this time it was different. Because now I knew he wasn't just some long-lost boyfriend from her youth. He might actually be my father. The next morning, I called the number on the last letter I found, one that had no date, just a first name at the bottom and a phone number in fading blue pen. It rang twice. Then someone picked up. Hello. His voice was deeper than I expected. Slower. Careful. I swallowed. Hi. This is Clint. Janice's son. There was a pause. Like the line froze. Clint. Yes, sir. Another pause. Then softly, I was wondering if you'd ever call. We talked for almost an hour. His name was Rick Alston. He lives in Traverse City now. Ran a small used bookstore. Never married. No kids. I always wondered, he said, voice rough with years. If she ever told you. She didn't. I figured. But I hoped. I told him about finding the photos. The letters. The shoebox. I never knew she kept all that, he said quietly. I wrote to her on her birthday. Every Christmas. I never got a reply. But I kept writing. For years. I didn't know what to say. My throat was tight. You wanted to be a part of my life. Clint, he said. I begged her to let me. We sat in silence for a while after that. Finally, he said, if you'd be willing, I'd like to meet you. I know it's a lot. I don't want to push. I'd like that, I said. Yeah, I would. We met a week later. Neutral ground. He drove down to Milwaukee. I drove out from Madison. We met at a little diner off I-94. Quiet place. No crowd. Just coffee, eggs, and enough tension to make the fork shake. He looked older than in the photos, of course. But the same eyes. Kind eyes. And when he smiled, something in me cracked. We sat across from each other in that vinyl booth, sipping coffee, making awkward small talk. Books, weather, work. Then he leaned forward and asked the question I'd been half dreading. Can I ask what she told you about your father? The one who raised you. I hesitated. She said Marlon was my dad. He was strict, distant, died when I was 16. I never questioned it. Rick nodded slowly. I'm sorry. I shrugged. Don't be. It's weird. But I feel like I've known you my whole life in a way. Like you were in the background, even when I didn't know it. He smiled. I've been here. Just not where I was supposed to be. After the dinner, we walked around a park nearby. Talked more. He told me about the bookstore, Alston Books. Said it was small but steady. Lot of dusty shelves. People don't read like they used to, but I keep the doors open. He paused. I used to imagine you sitting behind the counter one day, running the place with me. Silly dream, huh? No, I said. Not silly at all. He smiled. When I got home that night, I had 7 missed calls. All from Kendra. I finally picked up. What do you want? I asked. You absolute bastard, she said. You humiliated her. In front of the entire school board. Do you have any idea what you've done? I told the truth. You blindsided her. You blindsided me. Oh, I'm sorry, I said, sarcasm dripping. Was there a better time for her to admit she erased someone from my life? Someone I had a right to know. She was protecting you. No. She was protecting herself. There was silence on the line. I hope you're happy, she finally muttered. You broke her. She broke me a long time ago, I said and hung up. The next day there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my mother was standing there. I hadn't seen her up close since the party. She looked smaller, tired, not like the steel-spined woman I grew up fearing. She looked like someone trying hard to hold herself together. We stared at each other. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she held up a box. The same shoebox I'd found. But this time it wasn't sealed. It was open. Inside were more photos. More letters. And something else. A locket. I kept it all, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I just didn't know how to tell you. You had 42 years, I said. She flinched. I wanted to forget, she said. I was scared. Your father, Marlon. He wouldn't have accepted it. He barely accepted you. I thought. Maybe it was better this way. For who? She didn't answer. Rick wanted to be part of my life. He begged you. I know. And you didn't even let me choose. Tears welled up in her eyes. She held the box out to me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. But maybe you can understand. I took the box from her hands. And for a second, we just stood there. I set the shoebox down on my kitchen counter, not really sure what to do with it. My mom stood there in the doorway like she was waiting for something. Maybe for me to invite her in. Maybe for me to slam the door in her face. I did neither. You want coffee? I asked flatly. She blinked, surprised. Sure. So I made 2 cups. One for her, black, no sugar, just like she used to drink every morning while reading the paper in silence. One for me with cream and 2 sugars. I slid hers across the table and sat down. She followed slowly, like she was entering a courtroom and not her son's kitchen. Junebug hopped up onto the table and stared at her. My mother stared back, stiff and upright in her chair. Is she still clawing everything? She asked, not looking at me. Just the furniture I actually like. A weak smile tugged at the edge of her mouth. It disappeared almost immediately. I didn't come here to fight, she said after a minute. I came because you were right. About the truth. I didn't say anything. She took a sip of the coffee and exhaled. It sounded shaky, like her nerves were fraying under the silence. I thought I could compartmentalize it, she went on. Box it up. Pretend Rick didn't exist. That part of my life never happened. You didn't just box it up, Mom. You buried it. You erased him. You erased me. She flinched again. That seemed to be her new thing. I was 26, she said quietly. Teaching full-time, newly pregnant, alone. Rick was passionate, yes, but he didn't have direction. He was a dreamer. He wanted to run off to California and write books and open a bookstore on the beach. He didn't understand. Responsibility. And Marlon did? I asked, sharper than I intended. She looked at her cup. Marlon was safe. Stable. Military. Straight-laced. He offered structure. He wasn't. Warm, but I knew what to expect with him. He treated me like a burden, I said. Like something he was forced to take on. I know, she whispered. He wasn't good to you. And I should have protected you from that. So why him? Why not Rick? She looked up, her eyes red. Because I was scared. There it was. The one thing Janice Hardwell never admitted. Fear. I told Rick I needed time. That I wanted a clean slate. He didn't fight me on it. He just wrote. Every year. And I read every one. You never answered him. No, she said. Because every letter made me feel like I'd done something unforgivable. And the longer I waited, the harder it became to face it. I thought I was preserving peace. But it was just cowardice. I nodded slowly. She wasn't wrong. But it didn't fix anything. I met him, I said after a while. She looked up, surprised. Rick. Yeah. We had coffee. Walked around a park. He's kind. Quiet. Said he always hoped you'd tell me. Tears spilled onto her cheeks then. She didn't try to stop them. I almost did, she said. So many times. When you were 5, and asked me why your eyes were green when your father's were brown. When you came home from school upset because someone asked if you were adopted. She took a shaky breath. But I thought, it would just confuse you. And the truth was already too heavy. I looked at her. Maybe. But it was mine to carry. She nodded. You're right. We sat in silence again. Junebug curled into a ball on the table, unaware or uncaring about the generational reckoning happening a few inches away. I need time, I finally said. This isn't something that goes away after one awkward kitchen conversation. I understand, she said. I'm not expecting anything. I just wanted to look you in the eye and say I was wrong. You didn't deserve what I did. I nodded. And to my own surprise, I believed her. She got up and left after that. No hug. No dramatic moments. Just a quiet departure, like she finally realized she didn't get to control how this played out. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. Rick and I started talking more regularly. He called every Sunday like clockwork. We talked about music, books, things we both hated about high school. He was funny in a dry way. Thoughtful. Careful with his words. He told me once, you remind me of me, but with more bite. I laughed. Blame Janice for that. I don't blame her, he said. But I wish she'd trusted me. I started thinking about visiting him. Really visiting. Not just for coffee and awkward pleasantries, but to see his life. His world. Maybe even that bookstore. Meanwhile, Kendra refused to speak to me. She blocked me on every platform. Text, email, even LinkedIn. Like we were strangers now. And maybe we were. Maybe we always had been. I did get one email from her, though. Sent from a backup account. Short. No greeting. You made your point. Mom's humiliated. I hope it was worth it. You're not the only one who got hurt. I didn't reply. What was I supposed to say? Sorry your illusion of perfection got cracked? I think she believed the fairy tale more than anyone. The image of the strong, unshakable mother. The perfect childhood. The golden path. Me? I was always outside of that frame. A few weeks later, Rick invited me up to Traverse City. Come see the bookstore, he said. There's a coffee shop down the street that makes a KLLR espresso. So I went. The bookstore was everything he said it was. Narrow aisles, mismatched shelves, that old paper smell that hit you the second you walked in. There was a little bell over the door, and a cat curled up by the register named Harvey. This place is exactly what I imagined, I said. He smiled. I've kept it going for 20 years. Thought about selling it once. But every time I get close, I just can't. We sat behind the counter drinking coffee and flipping through a box of old family photos he'd brought from home. Some of them were of him as a kid. One was of his mother, my grandmother, I guess, standing in front of a red brick house with a pie in her hand. I wish she could have met you, he said. She would have liked your sarcasm. I chuckled. It's a family trait, huh? Runs deep, he said. There was something easy about being with him. No pressure. No expectation to perform. I could just exist. Later that evening, we sat on a bench by the lake. The sun was dipping behind the clouds, painting everything gold. Have you ever thought about what could have been? I asked him. All the time, he said. But I'm glad we found each other now. Late is better than never. We watched the water for a long time, not saying much. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally where I was supposed to be. I stayed in Traverse City for 3 days. Rick offered to let me crash at his place, a small apartment above the bookstore, but I got a motel down the road. I wasn't ready for that level of closeness just yet, and to his credit, he didn't push. He just nodded and said, of course. Whatever you need. We fell into an easy rhythm. Breakfast at a quiet diner. Mornings helped him organize boxes of donated books. Afternoons walking by the lake or talking shop behind the counter. It felt bizarre, honestly. Like a life I might have had in another timeline. There was a steadiness to Rick that I didn't expect. He didn't talk to fill the silence. He listened. And when he did speak, it always felt like he'd taken time to weigh every word before letting it go. He asked about my job. I work IT at a community college back home, I said. Mostly network stuff. helping professors unfreeze PowerPoint slides. It's not glamorous. I bet you're good at it. I shrugged. I'm fine. It pays the bills. He looked at me, eyes steady. You always talk like your life is something you're apologizing for. I didn't have an answer to that. On the second night, after dinner at a place that served meatloaf like it was gourmet cuisine, we ended up back in the bookstore. It was closed, the lights dimmed. The "Sorry, we're closed" sign flipped on the door. But Rick left the back door open so we could sit by the counter and drink leftover coffee. I want to ask you something, he said. Go ahead. Would you want to? Maybe help me run the shop for a bit this summer? I could use the help. Business is decent, and I've got some health stuff I need to keep an eye on. I looked at him. Health stuff? He waved a hand. Nothing serious. Just a couple tests I'm due for. I'm fine. But I could use someone who knows how to fix the register when it freezes up and carry boxes without throwing them out their back. I smiled. Sure. Are you trying to guilt me into bonding? I'm trying to spend time with my son, he said without blinking. The word hit me harder than I expected. Son. It felt real. Like a door that had always been closed was finally creaking open. I'll think about it, I said. But we both knew I already had. Back in Madison, life felt duller by comparison. The apartment was quiet, Junebug more clingy than usual. I fell back into the routine, resetting passwords, replacing projectors, refilling vending machine tickets. Kendra still hadn't contacted me. She posted a photo a few days after Mom's retirement party, her and Tobias at a vineyard, smiling like nothing had happened. The caption read, "Surround yourself with people who lift you up." I almost laughed. Then 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Clint, this is Reverend Powell. I sat up straighter. He was the pastor at the church we grew up in. We hadn't spoken in years. Hi, Reverend. Everything okay? I got your number from your mother, he said, voice cautious. She's been troubled recently, and she asked me to reach out. To guilt me into a confession? To talk, he said. That's all. I didn't answer right away. She's hurting, Clint. Whether you want to hear that or not. She's had 42 years to feel something. I understand, he said gently. But forgiveness isn't for her sake. It's for yours. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. I'm not ready. And I'm not sure I ever will be. That's okay, he said. But don't close the door all the way. Leave a crack. You never know what light might come through it. I saw Mom again unexpectedly at the grocery store a few days later. I was picking up cat litter and cereal. She was in the produce section, thumbing through a bag of apples like she wasn't sure if any of them were good enough. We locked eyes. She looked smaller again, less composed. Like the Janice Hardwell everyone knew was quietly unraveling under layers of routine and forced normalcy. I walked over. She looked surprised, maybe even relieved. Hi, she said. Hey. Long pause. Do you want to come for dinner next week? She asked, voice careful. It'll just be me. Quiet. I'll think about it, I said and grabbed my cart. She didn't try to stop me. Didn't beg or explain. She just nodded and turned back to her apples. Rick and I kept talking. He started texting more awkward, dad-style texts with extra punctuation. Just finished shelving some mystery novels. Do you like Agatha Christie? What's the deal with people naming their kids after fruit now? Do you eat fish? Trying to learn a salmon recipe. Might be overcooking it. Sometimes I laughed. Sometimes I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Once, he sent me an old photo of me as a baby, sitting in his lap in what looked like a hospital waiting room. He was young, thin, eyes full of something fierce and vulnerable. This is the last time I saw you in person, he wrote. Until now. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I replied, I'm glad we're making new ones. Around the same time, my mother started sending postcards. I don't know why. Maybe she thought handwriting softened the blow. Maybe it was easier than talking. The first one was from Lake Geneva. I went for a weekend drive. Thought of you. The lake still looks the same. The next. Do you remember when you broke your wrist jumping off the swing? I told you not to. You did anyway. I wish I'd hugged you more that day. Another. I saw a photo of Rick the other day. You have his smile. You didn't get that from me. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. But I didn't throw them out either. I kept them in the same drawer as the letters Rick wrote. Summer crept up faster than I expected. One Friday morning, Rick called and said, So, should I order you a bookstore apron or what? I laughed. Do I get an employee discount? You get first dibs on the weird donations. I took the weekend to pack a few things. Just enough for a few weeks, I told myself. A trial run. Some space to breathe. I didn't tell Kendra. She wouldn't care. Or worse, she'd see it as betrayal. I did stop by my mom's house before I left. She opened the door, surprised to see me. She didn't speak. I'm going to Michigan, I said. Just for the summer. To help Rick. She nodded slowly. That's good, she said. I'm glad. Then she stepped aside, like maybe she thought I was coming in. I wasn't. But before I turned to leave, I reached into my pocket and handed her something. A photo. One Rick had given me of the three of us, him, her, and baby me. I thought you might want this back. She stared at it, eyes wet, lips trembling. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded and walked away. I hadn't planned on staying more than a few weeks, but one morning in late July, I was opening the front door of Alston Books, coffee in hand, when it hit me I wasn't in a hurry to leave. Rick and I had developed a rhythm that felt natural. I'd come in early, sweep the floor, put on music, usually something old school Simon and Garfunkel, Fleetwood Mac, then help customers restock shelves and take lunch by the lake. We didn't talk about the past much anymore. We didn't have to. It hung in the air between us like an old photograph on a wall. Known. Accepted. Respected. One afternoon, I was sorting through a donation box and found an old hardcover with an inscription on the inside cover, to the one who wasn't seen, may you write your own story someday. I turned it toward Rick. He smiled faintly. I forgot about that one, he said. You can have it. That book stayed on the front counter from then on. Visitors would ask about it, and I'd say, it's part of the family archive. Back in Madison, life had shifted. Mom kept sending postcards, fewer now. Less apologetic, more reflective. You and Rick at the bookstore, that's a picture I can't stop imagining. I told Kendra I made mistakes. I don't think she heard me. That last part wasn't surprising. Kendra still hadn't called. But I started to notice small things online, her perfect Instagram life starting to fray at the edges. Less polished, more distant. Her captions are a little more pointed. Then came the message. A simple email. No greeting. You win. That was it. I almost laughed when I read it. Not out of cruelty. Out of recognition. Kendra was raised to believe that life was about appearances. Image. Praise. Accolades. And the moment the curtain dropped at that retirement party, when the mask cracked, she lost her script. But I wasn't playing the same game anymore. I didn't care about the medals or speeches or perfectly curated photo walls. My win wasn't a trophy. My win was Rick. It was standing in a store filled with stories, with a man who called me kiddo and meant it, who smiled every time I offered to fix the leaky pipe under the bathroom sink. My win was peace. But it wasn't just that. No, the real twist came a few weeks after summer ended. Rick and I had kept the bookstore going through the fall. Business stayed steady, thanks in part to the blog I built to showcase rare finds and staff picks. One night, while updating the website, I got an idea. A little spark. A slow burn type of revenge. Nothing cruel. Nothing sharp. Just satisfying. I wrote a blog post titled, The Letters We Hide. It wasn't a tell-all. I didn't name names. But I told the story. My story. About a son who grew up in the shadow of his sister. About the secrets hidden in a shoebox. About a man he never knew and the love that was kept from him. About forgiveness. Not as surrender, but as reclamation. I included scanned copies of some of the letters Rick had written. The gentle, patient kind of love most people dream of receiving. I ended the post like this. I used to think I was invisible. That I was the footnote in someone else's story. But now I know. I was the part they were too scared to tell. And I'm not hiding anymore. It didn't go viral. It wasn't meant to. But it got shared. A lot. Educators. Writers. People with complicated families. People who knew Janice Hardwell. And then the emails started. From old colleagues. From former students. From people who remembered me not as the disappointment, but as the quiet kid who helped set up the AV equipment, or the one who drew cartoons on the whiteboard when no one was looking. Even a few from people who said things like, I wish someone had told my story too. Then, one morning, I got a text from an unknown number. Janice Hardwell, I read your post. I hope you know I cried. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. I never told the whole story because I was afraid it would ruin my image. Turns out the only thing it ruined was my relationship with you. That's on me. You wrote it beautifully. And honestly, you were never the footnote. A week later, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a scrapbook. Handmade. Neatly labeled. The title, the other half of the story. It was filled with photos I'd never seen. Me as a toddler, sitting on Rick's shoulders. Drawings I made in preschool that my mom had apparently kept. Clippings from the school newspaper where I'd fixed the tech during assemblies. Even a letter from Kendra, scribbled in awkward, childish handwriting. Clint let me use his crayons. He's funny. I like him. At the back was a typed note. You deserve to be remembered. I see that now. Mom, I visited her a few weeks later. We sat on her porch. No speech, no drama. She handed me a cup of tea and said, I always thought being strong meant never admitting your regrets. Now I think strength means owning them. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We sat in silence. The air between us wasn't warm exactly, but it wasn't cold anymore either. My mom once introduced my sister as the only child worth mentioning during her retirement speech. She's the one who made me proud, she said, glancing at me like I was gum on her shoe. And I stood up, took the mic, and said, then you'll love what's coming next. I exposed the truth, not to destroy her, but to set myself free. And it worked. The revenge wasn't about rage. It was about reclaiming space. It was about being seen, heard, loved on my own terms. Now, when people ask what I do, I don't say I fix computers. I say, I run a bookstore with my dad. And if you ever stop by Alston Books, you'll see a photo on the wall near the register. It's me, Rick, and my mom, standing side by side. Not perfect, not polished, but whole. And that's the real win.